Hello, and you're welcome to Global Business Insights, where you get more details on the main business headlines across the globe. In China, the Caixin S&P Global Services Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) eased to 52.5 from a 52.7 in March, still in expansionary territory for the 16th straight month. China's services activity expansion slowed amid rising costs, but growth in new orders accelerated. Business sentiment also rose. And Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Paris as he begins a three-nation visit through Europe to improve ties, even as trade tensions mount. It's his first visit to the European Union in 5 years. Xi will also visit Serbia as well as Hungary. The Bank of England will announce a closely watched monetary policy decision on Thursday, also expected to keep the target interest rate unchanged. After the Conservatives were hammered in local elections here in the UK, we look closer at how Sunak may want to tweak his economic posture and whether he can expect any help from an independent and data-dependent Bank of England. We continue to get more first quarter results in the earnings season this week in the US, including from Uber, Airbnb, Warner Brothers, and Walt Disney. BP will also announce on Tuesday. Honda will announce on Friday. Economic data this week includes the Fed's consumer credit data for March on Tuesday and the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index for May that comes out on Friday. Analysts are expecting a 77 reading, close to April, but still below levels we were used to seeing. And we will be hearing a lot from central bank officials all over the world. US Fed's John Williams, President of the Reserve Bank of New York, and Thomas Barking, CEO, Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, will both speak today, as well as European Central Bank's Dr. Joachim Nagel, President of the Deutsche Bundesbank. CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, Neil Kashkari, also speaks tomorrow. And we hear from Bank of England's Andrew Bailey on Thursday. Quite a few opportunities to weigh into the changing narrative on timing and future frequency of interest rates cuts. And in Nigeria, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has alleged that President Bola Tinubu is placing his personal interest above public interest in the award of contracts, specifically in the award of a multi-billion naira Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road project contract to the Chagoury Group, for which he's said to have personal interests. Europe is hoping it sees more reciprocity in access to Chinese markets and commitment to open markets that will allow European companies to exploit opportunities in a fairer competitive terrain in China. A reciprocity that will, of course, produce fairer outcomes for both Europe and for China. China also wants to normalize relations with Europe as well, being China's second largest trading partner. Macron is calling for an update to adjust policies from a present situation where China's excess capacity, backed by subsidies in many areas, enable massive dumping of goods such as solar panels. Also, many ongoing investigations into spying and state-sponsored cyber attacks from China may also be on the agenda. This is as Europe wants more investments from the world's second largest economy. With pressure from the US to watch China closely, Europe has said it is pursuing a de-risking policy and not delinking, especially at a time when the possibility of a Trump presidency may also present new realities that Europe would have to manage. In short, it makes little sense for Europe to push an approach that helps Washington's bid to isolate China and restrict China's access to Western technology. Similarly, China cannot help but insist that it will only invest in friendly shores, putting Europe in a difficult position of straddling two conflicting opinions. China's economic carrots have worked well in the past, and Macron has to find reasons to remain close to Beijing. In a recent interview saying, "Let's be clear, I'm not proposing to distance myself from China, whether it's about climate or about safety, we need the Chinese. What it does not say, which is probably true, is that given the tepid economy and competition for investment flows presently favoring the United States, Europe needs China now more than ever. The Bank of England will on Thursday present a clearer signal on whether it will begin to cut rates in June. Why is this so important, especially to Rishi Sunak, who is just barely clinging to power as Prime Minister? Whatever is decided, even in the unlikely event that we get a rate cut, there is a lot of uncertainty on what a rate cut could actually mean. Indeed, lower interest rates tend to stimulate the economy. The UK is, however, still expected to suffer from low growth in the coming years, whatever the rates are. It takes time for the precise effects of rate cuts to be felt, let alone be quantifiable, time that Sunak does not have. With losses of over 450 councillors at the upper end of the worst expectations and almost half of the seats they were defending gone, Conservatives continue to believe that all they need is a little more time for British voters to see that their plans are working. As long as the satisfaction with the present trajectory continues to spike, all the Labour Party needs to do is simply wait and hope the Tories do not change course. Let's be clear, disliked policies do not mean policies are wrong, and listening to the IMF more than unlearned voters has a ring of altruism to it, but it could also be an act of self-sacrifice from a political perspective. The Bank of England may continue to be careful in bringing down interest rates, especially given what we've just seen in the US, where the data suddenly suggested the need for extra caution in terms of timing of cuts, despite recent weaker US jobs data coming out, causing a rethink. But the data and prognosis in the UK looks more promising. According to the UK Office for Budget Responsibility, they see easing inflationary pressures and expect a sharper fall in interest rates than initially thought. Real household disposable income per person is also expected to recover its pre-pandemic peak by 2025 to 2026, 2 years earlier than in its November forecast. But 2025 may be way too late, and the likelihood is that the Labour Party may reap all that the Conservatives have sown in tears. To the BOE on May 9, we get important clues also on where the bank sees inflation going this year. Last March, 8 members of the MPC voted for no change, only 1 for a cut. Now, are we going to see more policymakers asking or voting for an easing? Until recently, the US Fed was also expected to take the lead and start cutting interest rates. Now, the ECB could be the first to cut at its June meeting as inflation continues to fall in the Eurozone. In the UK, the next 4 meetings that will take place in May, June, August, and September are key to helping or nailing the coffin on Sunak's hopes of re-election. Chancellor Hunt is likely to push a tax hike ahead of the elections to appease unhappy Conservatives, and an unfunded tax hike could mean higher costs of borrowing as yields go up. Meanwhile, as Tories nurse their wounds and put up a strong face after a bruising defeat, Rishi Sunak was told by Conservative MPs yesterday to show some vision and start digging his party out of the hole it was in after a disastrous set of local election results. But he should not count on Andrew Bailey to help. Tomorrow, Chief Executive Officer Tim Cook will introduce major upgrades to the iPad Pro and iPad Air and new versions of the tablet's accessories. The online event, dubbed Let Loose, will last a little more than half an hour, starting 7 a.m. Pacific time, a bit too early for Americans, but timed to catch Asian viewers before they go to bed. The star of the event will be a new iPad Pro with an updated design and crisper screen, the first iPad to get an OLED display, organic light emitting diode, the technology used in the iPhone since 2017. In addition to improving the image quality, LEDs allow for thinner devices, and Apple is expected to slim down the Pro tablet accordingly, and may also include Apple's first M4 processors. The iPad Air, however, that's Apple's mid-tier tablet, is getting updated as well. The big story here is that Apple will add a second largest screen option for the first time. Updated accessories will also feature an updated revamped pencil, which can be squeezed to conduct certain tasks. Also to be unveiled is a more durable aluminium updated Magic Keyboard. That's a piece of equipment that serves as an iPad case and includes a keyboard and small trackpad as the iPad 6 to be the alternative to the laptop. And there will be news on AI-powered features and teasers on what is to come, such as cheaper versions of the 10th generation iPad. For loyal Apple fans accustomed to exceptional innovation in markets being harder to please than ever as competition heats up, the bar is already set very high for Apple. Chances of surpassing expectations have to be low, but with Apple, you never know. At a time when the president is touting a different Nigeria, open for investment and business, where law, order, and transparency means zero tolerance for corruption, the government needs to reassure Nigerians and set the record straight on allegations that this major contract did not follow due process and that there were no bid documents to support the award. The already known close relationship between President Tinubu and the Chagoury group implies that a transparent, competitive process must be openly demonstrated to convince Nigerians that public interest superseded private business interests of the president and his family. Still in Nigeria, where we saw a federal high court in Kano delivering a landmark ruling issuing a restraining order against the National Electricity Regulatory Commission and the Kano Electricity Distribution Company, effectively stalling implementation of a new electricity tariff targeting Band A consumers. My view is that while the right of consumers to go to the court should be encouraged, courts should not be allowed to improperly impede free markets and appropriate pricing that incentivizes investment, especially in the sensitive power sector, which has been held hostage by a myriad of legacy distortions which have to be put right to allow supply of electricity to improve remarkably. And in another development in Africa, MTN has stepped up its calls for higher mobile tariffs in Nigeria, joining other cell phone operators in Nigeria in lobbying for measures that it hopes will increase revenue and push up its ability to invest in its network. Like many other companies operating in Africa's largest economy, MTN has been affected by the devaluation of the Nigerian naira in the last year or so. And in closing, we look to Asia Pacific markets where we see the major indexes tracking gains that we saw in Wall Street after a weaker than expected US jobs report fueled hopes that the Federal Reserve could start cutting rates soon. However, Nikkei 225 is down 0.1%, but the Hang Seng, the Hong Kong index, is up 0.11%. The Shanghai Composite up 0.99%. The Composite, the Shenzhen, is up 1.91%, while the Korean Kospi is down 0.26%. Well, that's it from me on Global Business Insights. This is Bode Oshosami. Please share, kindly follow on Facebook and LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube and X. Thank you very much for watching and following. Bye-bye.